Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our second pub meeting in December. How that has time has flown. As a reminder, this is a meeting of community volunteers tasked to advise council on items related to the Water Bureau and the Bureau of Environmental Services. Under Portland City Code and state law, the Portland Utility Board is holding this meeting electronically. Board members and relevant city staff are attending remotely, electronically, or by phone, and the city has made it available for the public to listen to the audio broadcast of this meeting. The public will have an opportunity to provide comments during the public comment portion of the agenda and can also provide written testimony to the board by emailing utilityboard@portlandoregon.gov. Pub believes and acts upon anti-racist principles. In our meeting spaces and interactions with Pub, while every person has the right to share their personal perspective, we stand against wrongful conduct, particularly any conduct that is targeted toward people that are made vulnerable by systemic inequities. This means stepping up as a community when there is wrongful conduct and fostering a space of learning and growth. By putting our principles into action, we are active and deliberate. We speak up and we speak out. Each person is empowered to maintain the culture of the Portland Utility Board, and we focus on the impacted individual or population, condemning the conduct, not the person.
Hi, my name's Amy Archer Masters, and I will quickly run through the meeting guidelines. Please state your name before you speak if appropriate. State the name of the person you're addressing, or if you're just addressing the group. The chat box is only viewable by the co-hosts, myself and Jonna Lynn. Please limit chats to technical and logistical issues, including signing up for public comment, asking for assistance, or reminding us if you've been waiting to speak and have not been called on. The raise hand function is primarily used by the board and others during discussions. We may lower your hand just to maintain the flow of conversation. During public comment periods, public can raise your hand and you'll be called on when appropriate. If you're connecting by phone, you may need to press *9 to raise your hand. Videos may be turned on when speaking if desired. It is not required. Please mute your microphone when you're not speaking. And if connecting by phone, you may need to press *6 to mute and unmute. Comment is taken during the comment period early in the meeting. You can sign up through chat or raise your hand when we get to that agenda item. It's also available just prior to any formal board vote after a motion has been made and seconded by board members. The meeting's being recorded. Quickly pass it back to Lauren for the agenda.
Thank you, Amy. Appreciate you going over the guidelines. The reminders are helpful because I neglected to state my name at the very beginning. My name is Lauren Rosencrans. I am a pub voting member and co-chair. So lots to discuss today. We'll do a call to order and disclosure of communications. We have many updates and we'll be receiving introductions from the expert panel that we've been discussing about for filtration facility. We are going to receive a presentation and discuss Utility Bureau budget planning. Still needs to discuss engagement coordination. That will be dependent on time. I'm sure we'll have a lot to discuss about budget. And then we will follow up with announcements and the next pub meeting before we adjourn. Okay, so we have disclosure of communications. This is time for any voting board members to disclose any communications with city leadership or bureau staff regarding items that could relate to pub's work. Are there any items that pub members wish to disclose? Okay, hearing none, we can move on for public comment. All right, if we have members of the public here, please use the chat box to sign up to give public comment. You will be called by name. Amy or Jonna Lynn, have we received any comment outside of meetings?
We've not received any requests in advance.
Great. Okay. I'll give a few more seconds for any community members to add their names to the chat. Okay. And hearing none, I think we can move on. If members of the public are here and would like to add anything, just add your name to the chat. Um, okay, we have several meeting notes to review. They all three, the November 20th meeting, the 21st site visit, and then our first December meeting have all been distributed. Um, we can use this time for any suggested changes or corrections. I admit I personally have not had a chance to review all of them, so my understanding is we can add or submit any edits after the meeting. Yes, okay, I'm getting a thumbs up from Amy. So if we have any current suggested changes or corrections. Okay, hearing none, we will accept the minutes as is. And then if you have not had a chance to review them, myself included, just submit any corrections or edits to Amy and or Jonalyn. Okay. Do you want me to go this one, Amy? Let me see, I have some stuff to say. We have plenty of updates to share, and then guests to introduce, and a decision to document relating to the Bull Run Filtration Expert Panel. Amy, can you please start with the first two updates?
Yeah. So we'll be able to hear more directly from Director Ting Lu when we get to the budget presentation. But I just wanted to make sure that all the pub members saw the announcement that Ting was selected as the first Portland Utility Director. So that officially begins, I believe, January 2nd. But she is here to begin the budget conversation a little bit later. And you all have interacted with her so far in prior meetings. Those of you who attended the site visit got an opportunity to engage even more directly, and we'll have lots more opportunity in the coming meetings. So just wanted to highlight that. I think we'll jump because we have the guests, and I know that there were some questions coming from members. Why don't we jump to the Bull Run Filtration panel introductions first, and then I'll come back and loop back to the PBOT funding proposal item if that works for you.
Okay, yeah, that's perfectly fine. So yeah, and as Amy mentioned, we have discussed in the past Bureau's plan to convene an expert panel to provide oversight to the filtration project during this year of construction. And we have consultants and experts for the Bull Run Filtration Expert Panel who are visiting Portland this week. Libby Baki, the consultant facilitating the panel, would you please take lead on introducing yourself and the panelists?
Sure. Thank you very much, Lauren. Again, my name is Libby Baki, and I'm with Consor Strategic Planning and Communications. I've been working on the Bull Run Filtration project since 2018, and I'm very honored to be the expert panel facilitator. We are also very excited to have as panel members, I see that you're going to do a formal vote on that today. Two members, your colleagues, Portland Utility Board Co-Chair Lauren Rosenkrantz, and also Brooke Burnhanu. We had an opportunity this week to meet the panelists, and we had a very short introductions, but it was exciting, and I just want to thank you, Lauren and Brooke, for your time to do that this week. Also excited to introduce you to our expert advisors. As you may have heard, they're out at the construction site today. They're in a trailer out at the site. Craig Martell is our panel leader, Galvin Gilchrist, and also Roger Vandermaal. And what I'd like them to do is just take a few minutes to introduce themselves to you and give you a little background about the work that they've done here in the United States and also around the world. Craig, I'm passing it off to you.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you to the pub for allowing us to introduce ourselves today. As Libby mentioned, we're part of an expert panel that's been convened by the Portland Water Bureau specifically to review the projects here at Bull Run. We happen to be in Portland this week. We're out at the site, as you can see. We're in a trailer here, and we've been doing our initial assessment of the project performance, primarily related to PWB's work in overseeing the projects. Things like commercial management and some of the other dimensions of project delivery. I myself am with Brown and Caldwell. I've been with BC about 8 years. Prior to that, I've worked with other firms like CH2M Hill, Bechtel, URS on large complex projects and programs. Most recently, I was the program director on a sewer rehabilitation program for DC Water in Washington, DC, which is a $5 billion capital program related to sewer rehabilitation in that area. But I've worked around the world on the industrial city at Masdar in Abu Dhabi. I've also worked on the Metro Washington construction in Washington, D.C., as well as other large water projects and programs. I was the COO of a construction company, so I also have a bit of a knowledge about construction contractor behavior and driving forces related to contractors. So as I said, this is our initial assessment. We'll be doing more investigations and assessments. We've had an opportunity to meet the team. We've been looking at process, procedures, people, organization, some of the dimensions of the work that's going on here, and are looking forward ultimately to developing a list of findings and observations and things, a list of things and actions that we can take, and then following up on those actions to assure that the outcome of the project is a good outcome. So it's all about finishing strong, and that's kind of what we're focusing on right now. So thank you very much. Appreciate being
here. Gavin?
Thanks, morning, everybody. Gavin Gilchrist. I've touching 30 years of experience, similar to Craig, on large program and construction management jobs. Civil engineer by training, but the last 25 years on complex, large mega projects and programs in the UK, Canada, and the US, with a bit of time in Australia and New Zealand. We're glad that we have the opportunity to do this. We've been talking. It's great that you guys are opening up the doors and allowing us to come in, because we love learning and sharing the knowledge and the best practices. Mega projects, programs, I was sharing with Libby, they kind of create their own weather. They're the same as a normal construction project, but they're not the same. The little issues can become big issues. And sharing some of those perspectives and understanding the level of investment it takes to successfully deliver these projects is part of my role within Stantec, the organization that I'm part of. Most recently, I've worked with Metro Vancouver on their Iona, which is a $9 billion wastewater treatment plant. Prior to that, I was actually here in Portland starting up the Willamette water conveyance and treatment program. And currently I'm supporting San Francisco Public Utilities with their $3 or $4 billion water across their water CIP. I just want to say it's a great opportunity to share some knowledge, and we can see that you guys have done really amazing work to get this project to where it is in such a short timeline from when the initial sort of cryptosporidium hits happened. And we all are adopting the motto, how do we finish strong and deliver the most valuable project possible. So nice to meet everybody. Looking forward to talking more.
And then Roger, I was worried about mispronouncing your last name, and I mispronounced your first name. So please introduce yourself. Thank you.
It's all good, Libby. Yeah, yes. So my name is Roger van der Marel. I'm originally from Holland, was born and raised there. Started to work 37 years ago. I had the first 10 years in Europe in various countries doing oil and gas projects. So always a combination of doing engineering and then construction. So that was very helpful. Came to the US in 1999. Spent my career in different market segments, initially in the power business unit to build power plants, and then mostly in water, wastewater, The last 10 years I have spent with Metro Vancouver, or as Jacobs, but serving Metro Vancouver in Vancouver, BC. And I recently moved to Northern California. I'm about 50 miles from the Oregon state line in Northern California. And my current role within Jacobs is looking after our water business unit in California, and very happy to be here these last few days. I had worked with Joe Broberg before in Vancouver before he joined the PWB. I worked together with him on some conveyance projects, so it's great to meet the team. As my team members said, we are doing I would say 10 to 15,000 feet level overview of the project. We don't have the time at the moment, or wouldn't like to look at the details yet, but we have a good assessment. I would say program almost a little bit more than a normal project delivery is more like playing chess games. So what we are doing is making sure that our team and the tools we have, the procedures we have, help with that strategically, the strategic delivery of our project, making sure that we preserve the interest of the PWB and others, the ratepayers, to make sure that we deliver value and that we focus on not necessarily delivering it cheaper, but avoiding potential future costs. So really focusing on that going forward. So thanks for the opportunity to have us here, and we are excited, or I'm excited, to help the team deliver this program successfully. Thank you very much for having us.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Libby, Craig, Gavin, and Roger. Appreciate you introducing yourselves. Thank you for the time and the space to work with Public Utility Board. Happy to have you. And as was mentioned, myself and Brooke were identified by pub staff to be representative of the pub at this expert panel based on interest as well as availability that was most conducive to participating on the panel. So opening up floor for discussion on myself and Brooke as representatives. If no discussion is needed, perhaps a motion to approve the designees to the panel now.
Lauren, this is Amy. I'll just step in very briefly just so that the rest of the PUB members understand. So Jonalyn sent the survey out, took all of the responses, and really looked at interest level and capacity, who was most likely to be able to participate during the meeting times that are coming over the next year. So the full pub will still be involved in the full board updates, but these two were identified as the leads. There were two others who indicated interest and so we were recommending that they be potential backup participants, so that if for some reason circumstances arise that make it difficult for Lauren and Brooke to participate, that they could also be prepared to participate in one of the quarterly meetings in case that is needed. So we do have a draft motion that we can pull up on screen whenever folks are ready, but we wanted to give the full board opportunity before making a formal decision. Just with something like this, since they are representing the board in those meetings, it's valuable to ensure that the board supports and approves them as your designees.
Thanks, Amy. Appreciate you clarifying. So yeah, up for discussion, or we could hear a motion to approve.
This is Cormac Burke, voting member. I move to approve Brooke and Lauren as pub representatives.
Thanks, Cormac. Jenny's got her hand up. Go ahead, Jenny. You're on mute if you're speaking.
Sorry about that. So after the meetings, are we going to be briefed then on, of course. So that's going to be part of the ongoing agenda.
Yes.
Correct. Yeah,
We
that's
ha-
my understanding.
Sorry, Lauren, didn't mean to speak over you. On some of our final slides, I forgot to add it to this, but we do actually have tentative dates that they are scheduled or could be available for pub meetings. So I anticipate it would be a full agenda topic and full board discussion. And so you would have Brooke and Lauren or their backups if you do approve that as well to be present to share any added details about the discussion, but Libby and or the experts or staff would be looping back and providing information to the full board.
Great, good to know. I second the motion.
Great. Thanks, Cormac and Jenny. Leave some space for a discussion if there's other points. Hearing nothing up for discussion, I'd like to leave some space for public comment. Amy, have you received any requests for comment?
I've not received any requests. And just for the record, I just want to be clear that the motion that was made was to approve Brooke and Lauren as the representatives. So it's not what is on the screen because this also included the backups, which is fine that it's just approving you two. It could either be a second motion or it could be something done in the future if folks don't want to include that as the full motion.
Can I adjust the motion? This is Cormac Burke, sorry.
Yes, you're welcome to amend it. And then if somebody seconds that, then we could proceed.
Yeah, as we amend the motion to include Daryl and Kyle as alternates.
Thanks, Cormac. Do we hear a second?
Jenny O'Connor, I second.
Okay, thank you. Just gonna give space again if there's any added discussion. And hearing none, would like to open up for public comment. Any requests for comment, Amy?
No, none received.
Okay. All right, I will move forward with the vote. I'm number one. I'm just going to go by how we're numbered in the participants chat, so I'll call on you. I'm first, Lauren Rosencrans, co-chair, I vote aye. Jenny?
Jenny O'Connor, voting member, I vote aye.
Thank you. Alexis?
Alexis Wright, voting member, I vote aye.
Thank you. Cormac?
Cormac Burke, voting member, I vote aye.
Thank you. Daryl?
Daryl Bob, voting member, I vote aye.
Thank you. Brooke?
Brooke Branu, voting member, voting aye.
Thank you. And Lorraine?
Lorraine Wilson, a voting member, I vote aye.
Thank you. Okay, and that's all I'm seeing. So with that, motion passes.
Great.
Correct? Okay,
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I think that's the end of the filtration update. So thanks again to all of our panelists and facilitators for joining us. So I'll quickly jump back to very brief update and then give the bulk of the time to the presentation, but did want to let folks know that Lauren and Kyle, as the chairs in the leadership meeting, got to hear from the Deputy City Administrator, Bia Donapal, and staff about upcoming proposal. So you should have seen an email from Jonna Lynn about it. Transportation infrastructure, as most of you are aware, have significant funding challenges, and so they have had a team working to develop alternative funding strategies in order to address those needs. And it was the report from that work was presented to the Transportation Infrastructure Committee on Monday. So there is a recording of that. If you want more information, we can make sure that you have a link to that. They wanted to make sure that Pub was aware because some of the content does potentially relate to Pub's work in that it would be fees that would show up on utility bills as the method of collecting the funding from the public. There's a lot it's similar, I suppose, in some ways to what we've talked about recently with the flood safety benefit fee, but with a much longer time between the proposal and the next steps and finalizing when it would be implemented. And it's just a couple of many proposals, but it seemed like some strong ones that have likelihood to at least proceed to the next steps. So no decisions have been made. They just heard the report. I believe there will be more coming in early in the year. In the presentation materials, it did indicate some connections with Pub as a board. PBOT does have a number of advisory boards overseeing different areas of their work, and several were involved in the development of these strategies. A couple testified during the meeting. And so I expect as staff, one of the steps that we'll have as we move forward is identifying, the work that they've done, seeing whether there's any potential for connection or overlap or communication between the boards, and just what the next steps are as far as making decisions about the proposal. So I hope we'll know more. Like we did this time, it was late notice, but at least in advance of when it was being heard initially. And we hope to track it closely and find out when it will either go back to committee and or the full council, and make sure that Pub has opportunity to engage where appropriate. So we'll have more information as time moves forward. The information that we have, we've shared with you directly, and we will seek more. So if you have questions, we've already had questions from a couple board members. And so where there's information requests or specific actions that you'd like to see, please connect with John, Lynn, and myself, and we will make sure to put it on our list and for engagement with the DCA and PBOT leadership and their advisory boards. So we don't have time probably for deep discussion, but are there any questions or high-level comments that folks wanted to share before we move on to the main topics? Lorraine.
If I'm understanding correctly, Amy, this is a second line item that's going to be on people's utility bills?
It has the potential to be. So no decision has been made, but it would, yes. So if flood safety benefit fee is moving forward, so that remains to be seen exactly how it's going to look and how the communications happen with that. That's one of the other topics that we have to loop back with as it continues to move forward. But this would be additional. So it's not utility related directly, but would be billed on the utility bills.
And if I'm understanding correctly, you said that the chair and the co-chairs met with them, and it's considered what level of engagement?
So our leadership, it was just at our routine leadership meeting that the deputy city administrator informed the chairs that it was coming,
okay,
so we could communicate with you.
So
there hasn't been any engagement beyond that, yes. So
okay, I just wanted to be clear on what type of engagement. So it was just information.
Yes, our hope is that there will be more than that in the future, but that's what we've had so far.
Thank you.
Okay, Alexis and then Daryl.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I'll be brief because I know we don't have enough information really to be engaging on this right now. So thank you, one, for just kind of raising this. And I'll just state for the record a desire for more information and potentially engagement with the appropriate advisory board for PBOT. I am just concerned about adding additional fees to people's utility bills without appropriate engagement with, I mean, even like with the citizenry, I cannot say this word, citizenry of Portland, and it being brought forward. I'm worried about I feel like the precedent set by the flood safety benefit. This was kind of what we were concerned about, is additional fees being added to utility bills. Not that this is not an important thing to be funded, but I am concerned about things just being added on to folks' utility bills without proper engagement. So thanks for keeping an eye on this and for requests for information. And I hope that we'll continue to be engaged if this option moves forward.
Thank you, Alexis. Daryl, and then Lauren.
Hi, Daryl Bob, voting member. I shared Alexis' concerns. Quickly, you mentioned that the meeting that PBOT leadership had with Lauren and Kyle, that was recorded. I just wanted to, yes.
There is not a recording, so we just informal notes of what was discussed. And it wasn't, I mean, it was with Public Works Service Area leadership, not PBOT leadership. So we've not had any direct engagement with PBOT around the proposal yet, but I anticipate we'll engage with them or through the DCA as appropriate in the future.
Okay, understood. Yeah, I'll stay tuned for that information when it becomes available.
Thanks, Daryl. Lauren, you had your hand raised? Do you still have a?
Yeah, I'm just wanted to echo. I mentioned this in the leadership meeting because, as Amy had mentioned, it was very much just a brief information share of like, hey, this is being discussed. Keep an eye out for it. So we don't have any additional information, but yeah, Amy said that there will be notes. So just wanted to reiterate that. And I mentioned this in the leadership meeting, but I did just want to echo Alexis and Daryl's concerns of adding more fees and also wanting to be engaged and collaborated with, not just informed.
Thank you, Lauren. Jenny.
Yeah, Jenny O'Connor. Yeah, and I did write in saying that there are four recommendations that are on their list. And, I was saying the same thing as Alexis and Daryl and Lauren. Sorry about that. Yeah, I think the precedent's been set, and I'm honestly not seeing the correlation between transportation and water and BES as utilities. So I am concerned. I just wanted to have that on the record. Thanks.
Thank you, Jenny. And just for clarification, there were four, as Jenny mentioned, there were four key proposals, and two of them had fees that potentially could land on the utility bills, not because of the direct connection, but as the most cost-effective method for collections for the city. Lorraine, we'll take one more comment, and then we'll open the floor for the presentation.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify if it wasn't clear by my question. I wanted to get it on record that the interaction that they had with two of the pub members, two of the co-chairs, was informational, and I'm being very clear with that because it didn't seem that I didn't say I have concerns about it. I have concerns about it because I have expressed my concerns about the last time. But this specific time, I wanted to get it on record that it was just mere information. And that is clear because here we are again. I wanted to get it specifically on record that this was a very short meeting and it was just information that was shared so that as it proceeds, and if it happens like the last time, there is no box that's checked for pub. And I want to be clear about that. So I need to, I didn't want to, I was being brief, but I think I need to clarify. I wanted to be clear that it was brief and only information, and we don't consider this any engagement whatsoever. And that if it moves forward like the last time, it must be stated clearly that Pub was not involved in it. Thank you.
Thanks, Lorraine. I would agree. Clear is kind. Okay, so I'm sure a lot will come about. There will be much more discussion as we get more information and hopefully actual engagement and collaboration. But for today, we are getting ready for budget season, and we want to discuss Pub's continued advocacy and engagement with leadership. Oh, sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Right now, we're getting in foundational information regarding utility budgets and the plan for the current year based on the mayor's budget guidance. Please help me welcome Utility Bureau staff here to share information about the utility budgets. Director Ting Liu, Cecilia Hyun, and Shannon Reynolds.
Thank you so much, Lauren. I really appreciate the time and the discussion here. We can engaging with the PUB member together. My name is Ting Lu. I'm the interim director for BES now. Will be the incoming joint utility director. With me is Cecilia from Water Bureau, the water finance director, and also our the BES team member Shannon Reynolds. To say Director Quisha Light is not available, and also Farshad is not available. So you will hear from the three team members that we have this joint presentation about the budget update. Next slide, please. Yeah, so our agenda for today to share with you is some of the budget priorities and how we look into this. What are the key drivers? And then the second part is really the asset management plan. This is something that I know when all the members has been coming to the Columbia Boulevard treatment plant. There is a great interest in asset management and how we are addressing default maintenance. So we brought this into part of the budget discussion, and it is truly a foundation to driving some of our, especially the key CIP decision makings here. And then we'll move forward with sharing more updates and how does that translating from the mayor's guidance and how does that translate into the utilities budget guidance and process. We'll share some of the challenges and uncertainties, and also hopefully we'll have some time for open discussions and hearing all of your feedback here. Next slide. This is something that we have worked together between BES and Water that the budget priorities. So it's really looking to these four categories as we're evolving with uncertainties, but also stay grounded with the utilities mission and vision. The number one is really the regulatory compliance driver. So this making sure we ensure that we have continued compliance with very complicated both from a federal, state, and local regulations for the day-to-day compliance, and also looking to the future. What is the potential regulation compliance, and how do we making sure we are planning for addressing the future regulation concerns? The second one is a key part that you will be hearing from Shannon about how we are working through using risk-based approach to drive our investment, because we'll never have enough funding to getting all the backlogged maintenance. So we are looking to really high risk and high impact to the communities and using data and informed analysis and asset management practices to focus on the most critical vulnerabilities across assets, practices, and service deliveries. The third piece is the day-to-day operations, because the utilities need to provide the core service 24/7, drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater services. So we're really prioritizing to maintain continuity for both the operational side as well as the workforce perspective, and ensure that the safety is a core value for the utilities and supporting our employees through these transitions. Last but not least, this is more coming from the outside perspective, focusing on affordability and equity. While we continue to see the need for long-term investment, the Bureau has been focused very much, just like what you heard from last meeting, about our affordability approach and how we are bringing the affordable and equitable access to supporting low-income and qualified family members and residents during this time as well. So those are our priorities that we welcome any of your feedback and comments on this. Next slide. So like I mentioned, the key drivers, regulatory drivers for both utilities. And for Portland, I want to share that we have a very complicated, complex regulations that involves the drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater side. I'm not going to get into more details about this, but happy to bring an update on the regulatory contact and details in the future sessions. With that, I'm going to turn over to Shannon for the asset management piece.
Thanks, team. Again, my name is Shannon Reynolds. I'm the BES Risk Assessment Division Manager. I'm happy to be here. It's my first time presenting to PUB. I'm here on behalf of Kristen Acock, who's my direct supervisor, so she's sad to not be here, but I'm happy to be here on her behalf. So why we're here is to give you an update on our approach to how we are addressing BES's capital investment gap, which does contribute to the maintenance backlog that Ting mentioned, and to set the stage for how we are using our existing approaches to help inform investment strategies and budget discussions that are going on right now and into the future. So I'll go over how BES's portfolio management approach organizes our assets, our very diverse collection of assets, how our expanded and standardized asset management approach is applied across our portfolios, and that allows us to more consistently evaluate work and trade-offs to that work consistently across portfolios, and then, of course, how that informs our investment strategies now and into the future. So this graphic does a pretty good job of showing the diversity of our assets and how they exist in our world. I don't expect everybody to be able to read all the minutiae details, but they're there as reference for later when we are able to provide slides to you all. But really what this is trying to show is that there's a lot that BES is managing, and there's a lot of diversity with what we are asked to manage. We are unique in that we are very heavily regulated, and we are a regulator. So we have parts of our permits that require us to regulate other entities and perform enforcement actions. And the reason for that is because we have a unique situation in which BES assets are available to the public. You can think of, anybody can throw anything down the toilet. And we have to manage that and make sure that we are getting communications out to the community to make sure that what's going in is what should be going in, and how that impacts our systems and our maintenance and operations of those systems and reinvestments of those systems. So in totality, we have a collection of assets that we manage right now valued at about $27 billion worth of assets. That includes big pipe, 22-foot diameter pipe, up to the smallest diameter conveyance systems that bring sewage and wastewater and stormwater to our treatment plants, which contain tens of thousands of individual assets that we manage and track. And we also invest in restoration projects, remediation projects within the streams and rivers, and the Columbia Slough is a very important one. So it's a huge diversity of assets that we're regulating and regulated on. This graphic is meant to show, our understanding of the condition and health of the major assets within our portfolios, and to highlight that in some areas we have a high confidence in what we know about each of those asset classes and portfolios, and also areas where we need to continue to invest to get better knowledge and to get better confidence in our risks and our asset values for services that we provide the community. So you can see here our stormwater system, for example, we know some about the health of our system, but there's a lot out there that we know exists, but we don't have a good understanding of the condition that those assets are in. And there's a variety of reasons for that. But compare that to our sanitary sewer systems and our combined sewer systems, we have high confidence. We have a lot of data. We have a lot of knowledge about the health and the state of those assets and how they deliver, how well they deliver services to the community. And a big driver for that was the regulatory environment in the 90s that pushed us to really invest in gaining that knowledge and collecting data that continues to benefit us today. And so that's very, very helpful. So how do we organize all of this information and diversity is through our portfolio programs. We have 7 portfolios in total, but 6 of them really focus on the assets and the services that they deliver. And so that's what the presentation today will focus on is those 6 that focus on the asset and service delivery aspect of our work. So we have a wastewater resource recovery portfolio that really focuses on our 2 treatment campuses and all the assets that are there to support the treatment processes at the treatment plants. We have a collection system pumping portfolio that includes all of our 98 collection system pumps and their force mains. Our largest portfolio is the sanitary and combined collection portfolio, which includes all of our big pipe, all of our conveyance, neighborhood conveyance, our laterals, all of that that conveys sanitary and combined sewer flow to our treatment plants is wrapped up in this portfolio. It's a $17 billion portfolio, and it is our largest portfolio. The stormwater portfolio includes all of our green infrastructure. It includes culverts. It includes ditches and stormwater inlets. Those kinds of things are within this portfolio. And then our restoration and remediation portfolio focuses on our areas where we are focusing restoration and remediation efforts. So things like Columbia Slough, brownfields, Portland Harbor are all wrapped up in this portfolio. And then of course we have non-process facilities where people do work on behalf of those services that include things like our material testing lab for geotechnical services that we provide. We also have a water pollution control lab where we do a lot of water sampling and testing and those sorts of things. We also have some administrative buildings on our treatment plant campuses that fall into this portfolio. With all of that across those portfolios, that's how we have divided or distributed our asset valuation or asset replacement value for each of these portfolios, and it sums up to $27 billion. The capital investment gap that we see or that we have projected for across these portfolios is here, and it's based on what we, from industry standard, what we project to be a sustainable rate of reinvestment for this estimated replacement value that we have. It also includes what we anticipate as future regulatory work or required work that we will need to do to maintain regulatory compliance. And so this is our projection into the future of what we need to, the gap that we need to fill over a 10-year period. It does not include the operational aspects, this is just our capital reinvestment, which will have an impact on how our maintenance gap can improve over time. So the more we're able to try to meet or accelerate towards filling this gap, it will help our maintenance gap into the future. So it's important for me to share that we are making continual investments, but it's not enough to keep up with the decline in asset condition and be sustainable in staying out ahead of that asset condition decline. And we expect those future regulatory investments to come. And so we want to be prepared to be able to invest in them appropriately. And it's also important to note that capital work isn't the only solution to this problem. The capital investment gap does contribute and help, filling that gap does help the operational backlog and burden. But there's a variety of strategies that we can and should implement to help kind of address this big gap that we're seeing here. And so that gap across these portfolios adds up to $6.7 billion. So like I mentioned before, we are employing and expanding our asset management efforts. We have a long history of asset management at BES. We started back in the early 90s. And so we have a depth of knowledge in this Bureau of Asset Management that spans multiple decades. We are expanding it into areas of the Bureau that haven't yet had it applied to their portfolios of work. And so that's an exciting time for us. We recognize that most employees are asset management practitioners, whether they recognize it or not. And so what we're trying to do here with the work that I'm presenting today is establish a clear strategic picture for the Bureau so that everybody can understand the strategic direction that we need to go to mitigate risk in our portfolios. And that will trickle down and influence the more tactical approaches for all the teams in the Bureau who plan and deliver solutions and perform maintenance and operations activities across all of these portfolios. And just a quick highlight that we are very cognizant of our need to align with the city vision and our Bureau mission, and understanding how that then establishes and clarifies our role in the city, BES's role in the city, and the services that we provide. And that has a direct line of sight into how we've established these portfolios and the assets and activities that we manage and prioritize for reinvestment. So I want to take you on a little bit of a contextual journey here to set the stage before we dive into the risk framework that we've developed. And the backdrop here is our capital investment distribution. This is our current one that gives a little bit of past investment distributions and our current distribution, and then our future anticipated distributions. And I want to start by acknowledging that we had a large treatment plant, regulatory-driven treatment plant upgrade that we are currently starting to ramp down, and that's called STEP. It's the Secondary Treatment Expansion Program that started really in earnest before fiscal year 2019. And that has taken up a big chunk of the capital distribution for the wastewater resource recovery portfolio in brown there, and so that is where you're seeing that healthy bump. At about the same time, we reorged as a bureau and formed our portfolios, those portfolios that you see on the right. And within that time frame, just after that, we also started to expand our asset management program into those portfolios. And we started identifying and looking at risk across all of those portfolios. And we recognized two of the highest areas of risk, which I'll get into in a minute here in more detail, were in the collection system pumping and wastewater resource recovery portfolios. So as part of the next couple of years, we increased our investment in the collection system pumping portfolio while the STEP investment was happening, and that you're seeing that in the fiscal year 2023 bar. And as we move into the future with STEP ramping down, We will continue ongoing increased investment in the collection system pumping portfolio and the wastewater resource recovery portfolio because of that recognition of high risk that we saw through this risk framework that we've developed over the last couple of years. And so we just want to show that ongoing investment that we're making based on these risk frameworks. I'll come back to this and tie everything together at the end of the presentation here. So how do we assess the risk? So we have a strategic risk management policy that we've developed, and this really clarifies for the Bureau our approach to infrastructure and service delivery risk management. It clarifies the services that we provide to the community, the overall risk exposure that we currently see in delivering those services, and how the Bureau needs to respond to mitigate that overall risk. So this has allowed us to really compare across the portfolios what risks we need to prioritize and where we need to make some trade-off decisions. And this is important, but I don't want you to read the whole thing, but it was important that we establish first a high-level common language around risks and identifying what they are for each of the portfolios. So this was actually a big deal in terms of getting everybody on the same page about what we were talking about and how we were going to approach this as a Bureau. And so we very carefully and thoughtfully walked through identifying potential problems. We share similar problems across portfolios. And so that was important to acknowledge, have people acknowledge across those portfolio streams their potential sources and likelihood of failure, so the frequency that they might be failing, and also the sources, because again, they might be shared. And then, of course, understanding the impacts of failure in delivering a certain service, or a failure of an asset in delivering a service. And that was important to acknowledge as well. And that then helps us to more strategically inform and manage risks, and seeing where there are complementary things that we can strategically address that gets multiple birds with one stone in a way. Okay, so what industry recommends that we do is develop an organizational risk matrix. And what this is really taking those problems and identifying the likelihood that they might happen, and their criticality or their consequence, or the impact to the community, to the Bureau, or both. And so we really needed to establish that risk matrix to kind of set the stage for how we were going to evaluate the risks within each portfolio. And then what we did is we established a framework for scoring our portfolios against, and that included comparing our service delivery expectations, in essence, with our ability to do that based on data that we have for each portfolio. So the condition health of our assets, how well we're doing in each portfolio in that respect. And then, of course, the impact to the community, really thinking through where the greatest impact is within each portfolio and across portfolios was a very important step for us that we took some time to evaluate. And then we, of course, scored the portfolios and overlaid them on our risk matrix here. And that's what you're seeing in step 2. Each portfolio has its own circle, or they're not really circles, they're orbs is what I would call them. And that reflects the range of risk. So it was important that we didn't try to put a dot on this risk matrix. It was important for us to acknowledge that there's a lot going on within each of these portfolios. There's a lot of services being provided. And so how do we get a more nuanced view of the risk that exists within each portfolio? And so that's why they're more circular and they have these odd shapes, because they are reflecting the amount of likelihood of risk and the consequence of that risk within the portfolio. They do not reflect the size of the portfolio. So you'll notice the SCC portfolios are largest by asset value portfolio, but that is not reflected in this. It's really just the risk that is carried by that portfolio right now. And then the third thing that we did with this framework, the industry provides high-level strategies that we can deploy depending on where risk sits in the matrix. And so there are specific reasons for why each of these strategies exist within each of these quadrants, and that is meant to create a optimal risk strategy that pulls from each of those quadrants as appropriate, depending on where the risk is. So to go just a little bit deeper into these, the top right-hand part of the quadrant is where the red area is in the risk matrix, and that really is indicative of unacceptable risk that we want to mitigate as quickly as possible. So that strategy, that predominant strategy that is recommended is really capital investment, and that is meant to minimize the likelihood of a failure and the consequence of a failure as quickly as possible for the most critical services or assets delivering critical service. And that is probably one of the more important ones on this graphic. If you have portfolios, in our case, that are in that red zone. Just below that, in the bottom right, is contingency planning strategies. And this is for, acknowledging that things happen, things break without our control. Even if you have adequate reinvestment and maintenance, things happen. And so you need to have a contingency plan strategy in place for those most critical services and assets to minimize the amount of community impact. And so this is an area where we want to try to identify what those services are and make sure that we have adequate contingency plans in case something does happen, so that we can minimize the impacts to the community. In the bottom, moving over to the left, the non-capital efficiency and opportunity strategies is really about improving business processes, identifying or improving or engaging in or expanding partnerships to take advantage of opportunities. And this really should be applied when in low likelihood, low risk types of situations, or as a supplemental strategy to other predominant strategies. It really should not be used, in other words, to mitigate high or unacceptable risk. And so that's one of the key takeaways here. And then the last one, the operational strategies, is intended to reduce the likelihood of a failure. And this, again, can be used as a supplemental strategy, or it can be a predominant one if you don't have a high consequence of failure, but you do have high likelihood of failure. So the condition of your assets maybe aren't great. They're coming to the end of their useful life, but the consequences of them failing is low, and you really want to extract as much value out of them as possible. You want to deploy some O&M activities and investments to really take the full advantage of the value of that asset in providing the service. So once we had all of that identified and evaluated, we developed and wrote an annual risk report, and we will do so. This is an ongoing report that we will do every 2 years, where we will translate that high-level strategic risk into tactical approaches for the rest of the Bureau. And this is a collaborative effort where we work with subject matter experts in each of the portfolios to better understand what those tactical actions might look like, so that they can be informed from the people who are actually performing the work and experiencing managing and operating and developing the solutions. And so this is where the rubber kind of hits the road from our strategic direction and guidance that the risk work is providing, and actually implements it into tactical approaches and business processes throughout the Bureau. And then just bringing this all together, I wanted to just step through that we developed our organizational risk matrix, and we confirmed that we had the highest risk in these 2 portfolios, which you can see in that red area. And we moved to identify what the predominant and supplemental strategies would be. And the predominant strategy was capital investment. And so we moved very quickly to start increasing and developing trade-off scenarios within the other portfolios to allow and accommodate increased investment, capital investment in both of those portfolios. And we see that in the earlier years as we first came out with this understanding, and then we see that ongoing into the future capital investment forecast. And I also want to just say that that's not the only area that this work is being used and leveraged to help provide guidance. Bureau leadership is using this information to increase capital investment or I'm sorry, not capital investment, but to inform the content for the 5-year operating budget, and also in helping develop the scenarios for the mayor's budget direction. So this information is being used on multiple fronts to help inform the strategic investment strategy. And just to summarize very quickly, our strategic risk mitigation provides a strategic and scalable translation of city goals to bureau actions within each portfolio for BES. It identifies and compares risk within and across portfolios, which is very tricky. And it supports informed investment decisions so we can feel better about the decisions we're having to make. And then it compares risks across multiple portfolios to help facilitate appropriate trade-offs and transparent trade-offs in capital, operational, contingency planning, and of course, those opportunity investments. And that's my last slide. Ting, am I handing it back to you, or is it going to Cecilia?
Going to Cecilia, please. Thank you. Thank you so much, Shannon.
Thank you, Shannon. I thought maybe we can pause and do a quick time check. I want to respect the agenda, pub's agenda. Amy? So I have maybe 10 minutes, 15?
I think we'll probably use the rest of the meeting time for this topic. So we'll just take a couple minutes at the end to do, quick announcements and talk about our 1st January agenda. But yeah, so Lauren, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it would be best to just give as much time as possible to this piece and then any questions.
Lauren was having tech issues.
Oh, that's right.
She'll be right back.
I saw thumbs up though. So yeah, go ahead, Cecilia, and take all the time you need. And if we need to carry over some into the next meeting, we have agenda space for that if needed.
Great, thank you. Next slide, please. So I want to, before we get into the budget guidance or the specifics of it, I thought it might be helpful to review our combined rate forecast. As a reminder, I do want to thank PUB for your support last year when we went to council with our utility rates. The rates for this year that was adopted by council was our forecasted rates rather than the lower rates that we were directed to build our budget based on last year's budget guidance. So again, thank you for that. Again, as a reminder, the forecast for next fiscal year, 26-27, the budget that we're now going to be working to develop, again, does call for an 8.1% increase for water and 5.15% increase for BES, and that would be a combined bill increase of 6.36%. The forecast supports the current work that we're doing, and then also the capital investment that we have planned in our capital program. I do also want to mention that based on policy decisions, we can anticipate that the forecast will need to be updated as a result to reflect some of the decisions, policy decisions that have been made by the mayor and the council. Next slide, please. I know that, so here's the budget guidance that we received from the mayor. And this is information that Amy had presented in a prior meeting. But what we want to do is provide a little more context as to exactly what the budget guidance means for us as far as what we need to be putting together. And really more importantly, that's budget scenario number 3, what this rate reduction means. I think what we have since learned is that it's a little different than what we had initially understood when we received the budget guidance. So getting into each one of these, next slide, please. Budget scenario 1, status quo. That is essentially directing us to build a budget for next year with the understanding of continuing the services that we do at the cost that we're expected to need to pay for next year. And some of the costs are likely to be higher than what we had assumed in the forecast. In fact, in the more recent December general fund forecast that was recently released, I think it was earlier this week, the city economist did highlight that the true cost growth of personnel and internal and external materials and services that the city buys has outpaced inflation metrics due to factors including rapid cost growth in the city's self-funded health plan, collective bargaining agreements. So those were the labor agreements that were ratified early this calendar year. And then, of course, high cost services like softwares, and then increasing risk premiums, and then electrical costs, and some of the supplies that we use, including chemicals. Those increases outpaced the increase in that we're seeing in general inflation. So again, budget scenario 1 is building that budget with those anticipated cost increase in next year, as well as what we have planned in our forecast. It's likely that the rate increase that I showed earlier, 8.1 for water and BES 5.15, it's likely that we'll need a higher rate increase than what we forecasted to maintain status quo for the reasons, again, mentioned that the cost of personnel costs, materials that we buy, that city buys to provide services, has grown at a much higher rate than inflation. I do also want to mention that this is this is a budget scenario that we are working to build. So as far as how much additional cost above what we forecasted is something that we're still working on calculating. Next slide. So budget scenario 2 basically means that if there's a gap between status quo as far as the rate revenue that's required to support it and what we forecasted, we need to put together what we call budget concepts, or essentially cut packages, to bring the budget back down so that our forecasted rates can support that budget. So the example here I have is, if status quo require 9% rate increase for water to support that status quo budget, we would have to produce or develop reduction packages to reduce the budget so that the forecasted rate of 8.1% can support it. So for BES, it's any gap that they might have from status quo to getting it back to their forecasted rate of 5.15. One of the things that we understand now is that we should be developing multiple concepts. And these budget concepts will include what the work that we won't be doing, what's the impact to the services that we're delivering. And then budget scenario 3 is really something, again, that we are still working on to really understand exactly what we need to be doing. Last year, the budget guidance was a 5% reduction to the rate increase. So for the water, our 8.1% rate increase, essentially we were told 5% less of that. So it's 7.7% rate increase rather than 8.1. This year, the budget guidance is a little different. It's looking at rate revenue. So what our projected rate forecast for next year, we're being asked to bring that down, that revenue down by 5%, which means we essentially, the exercise here is to demonstrate a budget or produce a budget that shows that we have 5% less in revenue that we were projecting. And what would that look like? There is some recognition that there are required payments that the utilities have to pay. And that would include like debt service payments. So regardless of how we operate, we can't influence debt service payments because those are fixed based on prior issuance that we've made and commitments. So we can then deduct from that revenue requirement to be paying for those expenses. So that is something that we are, this is a calculation that we're still working with the city budget office on. But essentially what we are estimating is that we're looking at several millions for each of the bureaus as far as reductions to be able to, address this budget scenario. So again, it's essentially developing budget concepts or reductions that would amount to the 5% calculation. Again, we're still working on those calculations with the city budget office, but those are the 3 budget scenarios that we understand that we need to be pulling together. So just very quickly, challenges and uncertainties. Now, so the budget direction is essentially starting with, the status quo, maintaining our current service level. What we have that we are already aware of, and this is sort of what I would characterize as known unknowns, and there's actually a much longer list, but the two biggest items that I want to highlight for you today is our filtration costs. We are anticipating to update that. With the remand stoppage of work, we anticipate that project to program costs to need to be increased as a result, and we are working on that information. And that would be outside of the, what's the current rate forecast supports. Environmental obligations, that's something we share with Bureau of Environmental Services. And this is actually even a bigger hit for BES as far as environmental obligations that are out there for them. The other sort of unknown for us or uncertainty is related to the enterprise efficiencies, what the city is also calling it a realignment of core business services. That includes HR functions, technology, budget and finance, procurement, communications, community engagement. Those are functions that the city is looking to centralize to be more efficient. What we don't so there is an expectation or goal to find at about a 20% efficiency in these areas. What we don't know is the actual reduction for water and BES. Because of the goal to centralize these functions, we also don't know how that allocation of centralized function will be allocated back to the Bureau to, so we're going to be supported by by a bigger central office. Certainly we ought to be paying for those services. We just don't know how those allocation costs will land for us. And then there is also an expectation that potentially some of that centralization would be at the service area level. Again, that application to water and BES is at this point unknown. So and all of what I'm trying to iterate here is that there is cost related to those functions where while the expectation is that there's a 20% reduction, we don't know whether we actually will realize a 20% reduction within our funds. And then, of course, with all of those uncertainties, the rate increase, where we actually land is unclear. The information that we received from the city budget office is that the scenarios is an exercise to demonstrate, what services would be scaled back or eliminated potentially, and what's the impact related to doing so. And that does not necessarily mean that what we're putting forth within those scenarios will be taken. So what we won't know until later in the budget process, as far as the rate increase we need to support that budget, won't be until much later, at least until the mayor's proposed, until we understand what our budget will be before we can calculate the rates that's needed to support that budget. And then the last thing that I want to highlight, and as you can sort of imagine with all of the changes that has been happening, not only in the changing form of government, we also have new budget processes with the enterprise efficiencies and realignment work. There's also a lot of changes in how we will be organized. That is all happening at the same time that we're working to build these 3 budget scenarios. And we're still working on understanding scenario 3. All that is to say that we are working, and I say we because I know BES is in the same boat, working as best we can to be able to meet the budget timelines with a lot of uncertainties, with a lot of challenges, not only in the financial challenges that we're facing, but also in just process challenges. Let me just kind of run through the schedule as well, so you kind of get a sense of what we understand is coming up. Again, these are preliminary schedule. We still are waiting for more information on exact dates on some of these. We certainly know what the deliverables are for January and February, and then, again, the budget is still under development. They are working to incorporate some of the feedback that they've, and I say they, as City Budget Office, has been working to incorporate the council's feedback on the budget process. So we, the City Budget Office, has been working on developing the budget process as we go, work on putting our budget together. To start out, so January, the 3 budget scenarios are due to City Budget Office on January 23rd. In February, we can expect that information to be published on the 13th of February. That's what we understand now. I mentioned that the budget concepts information that will be part of the budget submission, but that is also information that will be reviewed with the mayor and the new city administrator, as well as our DCA. There will be conversations as to which of those budget concepts will formally be moved, what we call move forward as decision packages that would be considered by the mayor. And those would be due February, or we'll be getting feedback on those budget concepts from the mayor's office and formally put together the decision packages by February 20th. So that is the first indication of what we will understand as far as the proposals that we're putting forth or the concepts that we're putting forth will likely move forward or not. So that's sort of the first indication. And then, of course, February is generally when the City Budget Office will be doing their review of the Bureau's budget, working with the Mayor's Office through March to develop the Mayor's proposed budget that will be released April 20th. Again, these are the dates that we understand today. Certainly in February, March timeframe, I expect that there will be budget council work sessions. There'll be community budget forums. I believe there's conversations around how those will look. And then more recently, there's conversations potentially for a utility rate work session with council. Again, I put question marks because that's something that still needs to be worked in. And then, of course, by the time we get to May, we will be going before council with our rate request to support, probably at that point, the mayor's budget, because we won't have votes from council or won't have an adopted budget at that point yet. And so that the rates will likely be requested to support the budget that's been presented by the mayor in April. And I kind of want to also mention that certainly council will be reviewing all of this information, all the information that we'll be submitting in January, that January 23rd deadline. Certainly what doesn't move forward as sort of formal decision packages to be included in the mayor's proposed could still be happening because council would be receiving that information the council would be deliberating on the mayor's proposed budget and making their amendments or recommendations that can pull what isn't there in the mayor's proposed budget in. So, while we'll get a sense of what our budget may look like, we won't really know until we get through, the whole budget process when council officially adopts the budget in June, which I realize I did not put that into schedule. But early June is when council will need to adopt the budget for the budget to be in effect July 1. So I think with that, I'm going to turn it back over to the board for discussions and maybe questions on all the information that we have shared today.
I'm not sure if Lauren is back on. If so, I defer to you. We are in the final minutes of the meeting, and there was a lot of content that was covered. So I imagine there's probably a lot of questions, and some may need to carry over and either be communicated with staff, and we'll coordinate some responses. And we can also dedicate time at the next January meeting for some follow-up. But let's take a few minutes for the initial questions. Lorraine, you were first.
Thanks, Amy. Lorraine Wilson, voting member. 1 second. Cecilia, how is this process different to how we've interacted? And I said PUB has interacted with the whole budget process in that our involvement, it seemed to have been more involved in that conversation about rate increase, where we were able to advocate for an informed rate increase last year. I'm just trying to understand this process and how are we going to, how that engagement is going to happen so that we know that this is what is needed, why it's needed, and how it's affordable to the community. I don't know if that's if I clarified that question.
Yeah, I mean, our plan is to come back and walk through our budget concepts with Pub. And our budget concepts, if we would do it right, it would include all of that information, right? It's describing what is the work that we have been doing, why do we do it, whether we're scaling back or won't be able to continue at all going forward, and what's the impact on our service delivery as a result, and what's the impact to the community for not, for reducing those areas of work.
And this is Amy Cecilia. The one thing I would add to that, Lorraine, since you've been through it in prior years, is that one piece that I think will be valuable for pubs perspective and advocacy just to understand the impacts is at least starting from that base level of current service level, understanding what the rates would be to maintain service, and then what each of those next steps, what the trade-offs are that need to be considered for each of those next steps. Because often I think what you've seen has been the bureaus just having to achieve whatever cut scenario was mandated and not starting from that current service level and updated financial plan. So hopefully the information I think will help with your advocacy, but is certainly challenging for the bureaus as well, because it's a lot of new information and in a short time frame now.
Correct. So here's my concern. And I'm referencing how we came up with the proposal for rate increase last time. My concern is that the information is driven by the mayor that is based on fiscal alone. And I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen, because we recommended a rate increase that differed from the prior mayor. And let me look at into the politics about why he recommended a lower rate. And we were able to advocate in an informed way that even though the mayor proposed, I can't remember if it was 4% or whatever, here is why this is what is required because of the infrastructure, because of systems that might be failing. So that is the kind of, I am hoping, engagement that we have going forward with this budgeting process, that we are given information that is unfiltered, so that we can do our job as POB members to ensure that what we are doing is informed in a way that we are advocating for community, and it's not driven by any other things that are surrounding what the other people may inform what the other people do. So I hope that clarifies.
Yeah, it does. I'll just say thank you, Lorraine. I see there is a connection with Amy. What you are also is saying is, understanding the current level of services of the utility, and then what is the additional impact through these different scenarios. Yeah, we are currently actively working on those different scenarios, starting with our current level of service. So we definitely will be great to continue this conversation after the new year about as we are working through some of the all these scenarios and follow up on that.
Thank you.
All right. So recognizing we are just after 12:30, I want to thank the chair. Lauren is having some technical difficulties, so I will do the final closeout pieces of the meeting. We don't have the time that we hoped we'd have for more questions, but as Director Liu just stated, we'll continue this conversation in January and February. So as listed on the screen, we'll have carryover from today. If you have questions that you didn't ask while it's fresh, I encourage you to either make notes and just photo those, send them in to us, or email us, call us, so that we can document what types of questions, what areas of information you want to explore a little further, both in preparation for engagement with council and also for giving feedback through the budget process. So that will be the focus of probably the next meeting, particularly with the holidays between now and then. Anything else that folks want to mention or highlight? We missed announcements, so we'll send information out via email. We do still need Administrative Review Committee volunteer for January 13th. So if we don't have anybody before the next meeting, we will raise it again then. Any final questions or closing remarks before we call the meeting closed?
Amy, just Lauren here. I would hope that at some point in time, I think I'm taking you up on that offer to come and do a presentation on all the different regulatory bodies as simplified as it can be, so we can understand how that impacts what is done, when it's done, and how it's done. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I really appreciate the interest. I'll work with Amy to follow up on the regulatory update from here.
Jenny, go ahead.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to congratulate you, Ting, on your you're getting to be the Portland Utility Director. And thank you to all of you for your presentation. It was really comprehensive.
Thank you, Jenny. I'm very grateful for the opportunity, and we have an amazing team, and I really appreciate PUB's support. So we look forward to continue the engagement and this dialogue after the new year. So thank you, everyone, for all of your support, PUB members.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We will continue the conversation at our next meeting. I will conclude the meeting for today.